Hey everyone, I'm Pam Spaccarotella, and welcome back to Driver Stories. Today we're discussing DOT inspections with two guests who bring a wealth of experience. Sergeant Matt Ramsey from the Nebraska State Patrol, and our very own safety clerk Todd Donnelly, a former Nebraska State Patrol officer. Matt and Todd provide a unique perspective on the inspection process, sharing insights from both law enforcement and the trucking industry. With International Road Check approaching in May, now is the perfect time to review what to expect and how to prepare. All right, well, welcome to the show, Matt. It's nice to have you. And Todd, thank you for joining, as usual. I thought we'd start first with your background, and
Sure.
if you could give us just introduce yourself, who you work for, and kind of walk us through your journey as to how you got here today.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Matt Ramsey with the Nebraska State Patrol. I'm based out of the Omaha area. I'm a sergeant in our commercial vehicle division. And how I got here, it's kind of a long story. I've been doing this will be 24 years now as a trooper, coming up in a few more months. Grew up small town, southeast Nebraska. Went to college. Was in the Marine Corps for a while, and then joined the State Patrol, and we went through the academy out in Grand Island. We were the first ones to go out in Grand Island. They moved it from Lincoln to Grand Island. And then I was stationed in northeast Nebraska. Was up there in traffic for about 9 years, transferred to Omaha traffic for about 5 years. During that time, I got married, and my wife, and at the time, I was always on nights and no chance of ever being on the day shift. And there was a spot that came open, trooper spot that came open to do trucks, and put in for it and got it. At the time, well, and it still is, but that was day shift, so to speak. And put in, got it, and then was doing that for 4 or 5 years and got promoted to sergeant, basically overseeing the mobile units in Troop A, and I've been doing that ever since. It's part of my duties. Do hazmat inspections, I do bus inspections, level 6 inspections, post crash. In addition to the supervisory stuff as well.
Wow. Okay. And the area you cover is?
It's the Troop A
which
Metro, which is Douglas, Sarpy, Cass counties, Dodge, Washington counties.
Okay.
Basically Omaha Metro.
And so just out of curiosity, what is your degree in?
Criminal justice.
Okay. And you got that from? Through Kearney.
Yep.
Okay. So another thing that you mentioned is your past experience in the Marine Corps. And if you don't mind telling us what your specialty was in the Marine Corps.
So I was an engineer mechanic. Theoretically, I was supposed to be able to work on anything diesel engines or tracked vehicles.
Okay.
With that, went to boot camp out in San Diego, MCRD San Diego. And then my military occupational specialty school, MOS, where I learned my job was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Okay.
And then otherwise I was in the reserves.
Right.
Here in the Omaha area. And
so don't you think that we're going to talk about this as we move forward, but don't you think that mechanical background helps you in your job today? A little bit, at least?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay.
In terms of it kind of knew a little, like in terms of it's a big truck, wasn't afraid of it, kind of a thing. But in terms of but the mechanic thing is, hey, you're trying to fix something, whereas what we do with the inspections is not so much, hey, we're trying to fix something as much as, hey, that's broken and it needs to be fixed.
Okay. Do you have to have a certain amount of road time? I mean, are you required to be out a certain amount of days, miles?
It's not where I'm at now,
okay,
so to speak, because I'm a supervisor. But my time should be, I'm in the truck division, commercial vehicle division. So the guys that I supervise in my time, we're supposed to be doing more focused on the commercial vehicle side of things, mix app, size and weight, that kind of stuff. They've kind of loosened it up over the last handful of years. So it used to be like when I came on, guys in the truck division were not allowed to stop a car. If they did, they better have a very good reason for stopping a car. And then it's kind of evolved a little bit to, yes, you can, but try not to now it's, hey, it's highway safety. If you need to stop a car because they're doing something stupid, go stop them. If the truck's doing something stupid, go stop the truck. It's whatever is about highway safety.
So the focus is highway safety, regardless of the vehicle that you're in.
Yeah. We try to go out to these different companies to, it's like, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is, maybe some tips, some suggestions, whatever, to help them actually be better, safer drivers, better, safer vehicles on the road, and things like that.
So probably one of the things our listeners are most interested in is the actual inspection. So I guess my first question is, how do you pick?
So in Nebraska, and I want to say, I think every state except Michigan, maybe don't quote me exactly on that, but there's the vast majority of states out there. If you're a commercial motor vehicle, anything over 10,000 pounds, either based on the weight or weight rating with the truck and trailer, or truck by itself. If you're a commercial motor vehicle, we can stop you just because you're there. Don't need a reason to, other than you're the next one. So we could theoretically stop you just because you're the next one there. But I try to work and I try to instill in my guys that there's enough trucks in the Omaha Metro that are actually doing something. Stop the ones that are doing something, whether it's speeding, some other traffic violation, whether we suspect a size or weight violation. Try to stop the ones that are actually doing something that are, a hazard to the highways.
So nothing pops up on your screen and says, hey, this is LGT, you should pull them over?
Well,
or is there?
So with LGT, you guys haul a lot of hazmat with that. So there's we have to do so many hazmat inspections to stay certified every year. It's only, I think, 8 or 9 a year to stay certified cargo tank hazmat. But we don't get credit for cargo tank if it has hazmat. So LGT, if they have hazmat placards on there, might be, to somebody who's hazmat certified, maybe stopping to get the hazmat inspection done. But still, even with the hazmat placards, we still try to focus on the ones that are actually doing something versus the ones that aren't doing anything.
So do you, when you do pick somebody, is it generally at a weigh station that you pull them over, or is it on the road?
So I'm a mobile.
Okay.
I'm a mobile unit. So most of my stops are done roadside. Working the interstate, Highway 50, Highway 75, wherever. And if I choose to stop a truck for an inspection, depends on what kind of an inspection I'm doing. If it's a level 2 or level 3, maybe we'll do those roadside. But if it's going to be a level 1, we'll move them off to somewhere safer location, parking lot of the truck stop. Omaha has these crash investigation sites along the interstate. Get them off the interstate and have them park on these crash investigation sites and do the inspection there. Just wherever it's going to be safer for everybody involved, myself, the truck driver, the other motoring public. Just kind of depends on the situation with that. That's one of the differences that I've come to find out from traffic to here. When traffic, you stop a car, wherever you stop the car, it's, man, we're staying until we're done. You're drunk or you got warrants, whatever. We're going to stay there until you're done, or it's just a speeding ticket. You stop a commercial vehicle and you get somebody stopped on the inside of shoulder by 80 and 72nd Street or 84th Street. Hey, I got your paperwork. Let's go move down the road. We're going to move to the right side, maybe even get off the interstate somewhere, just so we're not, messing up traffic behind us, because we don't want to, crashes to happen.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
So you get them off the road, and let's just talk about a level 1, right? Do you have a form you fill out? Do you have a standard walk around procedure that you do? I mean, how do you do it?
Sure. So all the inspections that we do, there's 3 main types, level 1, 2, and 3, although there's 8 different types that they're working on right now. But the 3 main types, level 1, 2, and 3, they're all standardized. It's all the same class that we went through here in Nebraska, that they go through in Texas, that they go through in California, New York. It's the same 37-step procedure for the level 1 for that inspection.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, do you remember the first one you did?
Not my very first one, but I remember my 30. So we have to do 32 inspections once we go through the class. We have to do 32 to become certified, whether it's a level 3 or level 2 or level 1. I remember my 32nd one, though. It was a crash. Well, it wasn't a crash. It was a truck hit his brakes. It was a rendering truck that had pig guts and stuff. Slammed on his brakes at 120th and L Street. So we get called out there for that because pig guts everywhere. And so that was my 32nd level 1 inspection to be observed by somebody.
That was your initiation.
That was my 32nd one that said, I'm done. I can go out and do this on my own. I remember falling underneath the truck. Level 1 is the comprehensive one where you do the walk around, you check the driver stuff, but you also go underneath the vehicle and check the brakes and suspension. And I remember going underneath that truck. I mean, there's blood dripping down from the whatever. And we got in front of the trailer, kind of where what they call it, a catwalk or whatever. And there was a pig's head just looking down at me on that. So I remember that one, but I couldn't tell you
the first one.
Some of the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
although if you were one of the first ones that I stopped and you weren't hazmat, I probably should apologize. I'm guessing it probably took me a little bit longer than normal because I was still learning about it.
Yeah. Do you have any pet peeves when you do it? One thing you look for all the time, every time?
We're doing I don't necessarily have, wouldn't say pet peeves, because when we're doing inspections, we're still looking for the same things.
Okay. What's the most common then?
Some of the violations that are most common: lighting violations, tire violations. Maybe load securement would be the vehicle type stuff. Lights. I mean, there's a million lights. You got your turn signals, hazard light, brake lights, ID lights, clearance lights, headlights. So you got a lot of those, a lot of connections especially with trailers that sometimes they get plugged in and sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's issues with the wires, tires, anything from being flat to tread depth issues to sidewall damage to coming into contact with some part of the vehicle. And then load securement, not so much with kind of products that you guys are hauling, but like a lot of flatbed stuff or heavy machinery where they don't have enough tie downs or the proper tie downs for what they're hauling.
Let's talk a little bit about log procedures, right? So now we're all on ELDs, almost all of us. There's few that are still, I think, exempt. How do you do that these days? Because it's all electronic.
Yeah, so that would encompass obviously a level 1, but there's also what they call level 3. Level 3 is just a driver credential. So we stop somebody for, like I said, Omaha Metro can try to have a reason to stop, not just because you're there. But if so we got the reason for the stop, we'll get it to a good safe location. We'll approach the vehicle. We'll ask the driver for the driver's license, insurance, registration, annual inspection for the truck and trailer. We'll also be looking for the paperwork for, if you guys are hauling hazmat, looking for the shipping papers, looking for the emergency response information. Check I guess I'm not level 3. Checking that kind of stuff. And then the ELD or your logbook, have the driver send, they will actually wire their logs to us. We'll go up to the cloud and then we can sign in on a different program to access that from the cloud. And we can look at their logbooks from back in our vehicle on our computer with that. And just
And
go
so
from
what do
there.
you check for on their logs?
So on the
Just out of
logbook, so
curiosity.
we're checking for hours of compliance, right?
Okay.
So you can't drive more than 11 hours between your qualified breaks, can't work and drive more than 14 hours between qualified breaks. Making sure, unless you have some exemption, that you don't drive more than 8 hours in a row without taking a 30-minute rest break. With that, make sure you got your, depending on how many days of the week you work, make sure you're not over your 60 or 70 hour rule with that. With the ELD, we're checking to make sure it's a compliant ELD. We're checking to make sure that all the required information's on your logbook or ELD, the driver's license, the name, the company name, DOT number. If you have a trailer, the trailer information's on there, the shipping paper information, if you're loaded, is on there. And then we go through the logbook to see if you have any receipts or whatever. We'll check those as well, but to verify, okay, this is where your log says you were at. Do you have any receipts that show otherwise, or just kind of go through the process like that.
So
Make sure you're in the right status when you get pulled over. I stopped somebody yesterday that was driving and had been driving from over by St. Louis, went out to Grand Island and came back and somehow was off duty the whole time.
Okay.
So we're checking to make sure that they're in the right driving
Right.
status. at the time
So
stop.
when you pull them over, which status are they supposed to be in?
So obviously you're driving. Anything behind the wheels while you're moving down the road is drive time.
Drive time.
Anything else, if you're not driving, is on duty time. If you're working for the company, if you're roadside inspection, should be on duty time. Off duty is, hey, I am completely relieved of responsibilities from the company. I can do whatever I want for this time frame. If you have a sleeper berth, then the time in your sleeper berth would be sleeper berth time.
Does it matter anymore whether it's sleeper berth or off duty?
Yes, because there's if you code your time off duty, you have to have you only get 10-hour blocks for qualified rest breaks. If you have a sleeper berth, there's a sleeper
Split.
berth provision that you can split that up. You have 2 periods that equal up to at least 10 hours. As long as you've got one period of at least 2 hours, and another one has to be at least 7 hours. The 7 hours has to be at least in the sleeper berth. And as long as those 2 periods add up to at least 10 hours, you can use that as a qualified rest break. Whereas if you just code that all as off-duty time, you can't split your time at all.
What about personal conveyance? Todd's laughing. How do you check for an improper use of personal conveyance?
So there's in the regulation, there's like 15 or 16 specific things that says you cannot do this for personal conveyance. And basically, I don't remember everything because if I come across this roadside, I have to look it up myself. But basically, if you can't further the load, you can't
Is it a common violation?
Depends on where you're at, and it depends. I don't come across that terribly often, but I talk to some other inspectors, in different parts of Nebraska, and they're like, yeah, we see this all the time.
So I'm going to switch gears then, and since you have been in rural Nebraska, up in Norfolk before, right? The use of the ag exemption. How is that monitored, or is it monitored?
So it depends on what they're hauling, when they're hauling it. So if you're hauling an ag exempt product and you can claim that, then you get that exemption for that. And basically all your time within 150 air miles from I believe the source.
Yes.
You're
off duty.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's some other ones that you talk about ag exemptions. There's some other ag stuff that you get it from the source as well as the destination.
Right.
All off duty.
Yeah.
So you can drive for 23 hours in your 150 air miles to work, and you're just fine as day.
You can run
according
all
to
night.
the hours of service regulations. Which again kind of goes back to, I guess what I try to instill in my guys and myself is try to stop the ones that are actually doing something. Because you can have somebody who's completely compliant according to the hours of service rules, but yet they're all over the road because they're tired as all get out.
Yeah.
You stop and check their logs. Yep. Hey, I was off duty for 24 hours. I spent it at the casino. Did you get any rest? Well, your logbook shows you're just fine, but your driving behavior shows otherwise.
Do they send you to school for about driving behavior? I mean, what are the signs? How to look for somebody that might be tired or might be under the influence, or
So in the academy we get a DUI training in the academy, and just a lot of the indicators for not being able to maintain your lane, driving over the road, delayed reaction. And they're very similar with being fatigued, those same behaviors, and they're very similar to driving distracted. Right, somebody's driving on their phone or driving with their phone out in front of their face, not being able to maintain your lane. Sitting at a stoplight for 2 minutes after the light changed to green. You just don't know you don't know if they're drunk, tired, or they were distracted until you get them stopped, or maybe you can see that. I got my phone to your face when you're driving down the road, maybe. But otherwise, the behavior when you're behind the vehicle, you just know that, hey, this vehicle's all over the road, and that's not safe because they might hit somebody on the road, or on the shoulder, they might hit somebody that goes across the median and hit them. So we're trying to stop the driving behavior, and then figure out, okay, were you drunk, or is it because you were distracted, or just because you haven't slept in the last 24 hours?
Let's talk about ABS, because it drives me crazy. That ABS system. Are there a lot of ABS violations? Is that something that comes up a lot?
I don't know what the numbers are on that, but I know sometimes it can be a little confusing if the inspectors aren't using. There's a flow chart for that because it depends on what year the truck was made, depends on what year the trailer was made. You go for the flow chart, and then it also depends on, okay, was the truck made before a certain year with a trailer made before a certain year? Depends on how the inspection process is. Generally speaking, turn a key on is supposed to do the clicking thing, check to see the light on the trailer come on, go off. But if that doesn't happen, sometimes people forget that, hey, there's some trucks out there now that you got to disconnect the electrical system from the trailer. And then when they plug it back in, then it cycles like it should. So sometimes that part of the process gets missed. And so I've talked to some people that have had inspections and frankly, we did a program here with another company, and they're like, for this truck and this trailer, you have to pull the power to the trailer in order to check the ABS. And all the inspector did was just turn the key on, turn the key off, and nothing. So they got the violation.
So at the risk of incriminating myself, when I see the flashing lights in my rearview mirror, my heart goes pitter-patter, pitter-patter. And I get all nervous and I pull over and I feel guilty and I feel terrible. And he says, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And I'm like, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I do." But, the first time that I got pulled over was when I was younger. And I think that what I'm trying to say is the emotions that go through you when you're getting pulled over. I'm sure that you pull over a variety of different types of people. And some approach you as, an officer, of the law and give you the respect you deserve. But I'm guessing that some are belligerent, some get angry, some get. So how do you handle those situations? And how would you tell a driver to respond to an officer?
Go back to your initial question about you get all nervous and whatever. I get the same way, and I know a lot of other officers get the same way too. Is especially when they're in a different state, different city, whatever. It's like, did I do something? Not even that they turn the lights on, but just that they pull out behind you or something. You get a little nervous like that. But yeah, we do get the gamut of you stop the old lady that's never been stopped before and is so nervous that they're shaking and whatever, compared to somebody who's a career drug or gun smuggler. They act the same way too initially, but somebody who's not doing anything nefarious, if you will. That nervousness tends to go down. We try to keep all of our stops professional. Doesn't matter if it's the grandma or the career drug or smuggler or somebody who rolls out their window a crack and every word out of their mouth is the F word. We try to keep it professional and do our job as why we stopped it. And the more time you come on and the more time you have, the more experience you develop, the more you can sense, okay, she's never been stopped before. That's why she's nervous versus this car was out in California 3 days ago and you were only there for a day or something, the story doesn't make sense, that kind of thing. So you can kind of tell based on your training experience that, okay, this is when you need to treat it a certain way versus another way, but we can try to be professional with everybody and go from there.
So Todd, I'm going to pick on you for a little while.
Okay.
Can you remember a particular driver that you pulled over that maybe wasn't professional and how you handled it?
There's been several incidences. And just like Sergeant Ramsey was saying, you just got to remain professional and they always tell you this in the academy, it's not personal. Nothing they say to you, nothing they do to you is personal. Don't take it personal. You act like Sergeant Ramsey said, you act a professional. You do your thing and you do what you have to do. Paperwork is given to them. Thank you. Have a nice day. But there were times where you had to be a little more boisterous. And when I went through a long time ago, we did something called verbal judo. It was how to talk down situations. And when a driver would escalate or this and that, you knew what to say. And like you said, just remain, it's not personal. And it never really got to the point where it was out of control.
Hmm. What do you both do when somebody can't speak English?
Translate app on Google.
Okay.
Gets used quite a bit.
It does, doesn't it? Okay. Same for you?
Well, when I came through, it was the early 90s.
Oh.
So when I first started in law enforcement, there was nothing like that. So you just did the best you could, And at that point, you started to learn a little bit of Spanish where you could talk through a traffic stop. And when I started, I was a city cop, and we could always find someone that could translate.
Obviously, depending on certain things out there, but I had a level 3 yesterday that took me almost 2 hours, large part because I had to use the Google Translate app with that. And there was that was the same one with the logbook issue too, so digging into that one. But so a lot of the Google Translate, it's helpful for roadside traffic stuff. Now, if it would have evolved into something more serious, we'd try to get somebody who actually can speak the language. But just interacting on a traffic stop, Google Translate's how we try and go.
And that was a luxury we had here in the metro area. We could rely on different agencies if we needed someone translate. We could call up and say, hey, is there somebody in Douglas County, Sarpy County, La Vista that can speak Spanish? And they would come out and help. But where Sergeant Ramsey started, way out in, I guess, Norfolk, I call it way out west because I grew up in Omaha. They're out there by themselves and they got to do the best they can. But luckily, we had the luxury here in Omaha to be able to call somebody if needed to translate.
Okay. So I'm going to stop for a second. And Todd, tell us your background. Okay.
I guess in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, I started out as a local police officer. 3 years there before I went to the State Patrol. And of those 3 years, I spent 2 years in SWAT. How I wound up at the State Patrol, I thought they were the coolest thing. The first time I saw that campaign hat go on the head, and I thought, man, I got to be one of those. So left the city police for the patrol. That's where me and Sergeant Ramsey met. We met at the academy, went through the academy, and I wanted to Omaha slot. So I chose carrier, and what Sergeant does now is I was a portable unit. I worked the Omaha area for 3 or 4 years. I can't remember exactly how many. Then I went to executive protection with the governor, did that for a while. Then when I came back, I went to traffic. And then in traffic, I was asked to become a driving instructor. And then I went down to, I'll never forget this, went down to Burns Flat, Oklahoma for a couple weeks of driving instruction. And that's when I realized I don't have I have a night blindness. So I came back here and they went through a series of tests. And like Sergeant Ramsey talked about at the beginning is, why did you leave? And well, I didn't have any say in the matter. They just medically retired me. Medically retired, and then I went and did the DOD background investigation for a while. Travel, that was a contract. And then I spent 2 years, I think, doing that. My last tour was up in Anchorage at J Bear. Came home after 2 months. My wife goes, "You're done working." So we had 2 young kids at the time. I stayed home and raised them until my daughter was old enough to go to high school, and she decided to go to the most expensive high school here in Omaha. And that's when my wife told me to go back to work. And luckily I fooled Brian enough to know that I knew what I was talking about in commercial motor vehicle. And you guys hired me. Been here for 2 years.
Okay. And you also have a degree.
Yes, I have a bachelor's in investigations and a master's in security management.
Okay. And so you also have experience with pulling commercial trucks over and doing roadside inspections.
Yeah, that was my first 3 or 4 years doing that out of Omaha. Yeah.
Okay. I think now that you've been on both sides.
Oh, I know where this is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you my example, right? I was also in the military. I was in the Air Force, and I went to the Air Force Academy. And first year that we were in the academy, we were dualies and had to, square corners and square meals and all that kind of stuff. And then we get recognized. We are in a position where we're now supervising other people and things like that. And perspectives change when you go from one to the other, right? So now that you've been inspecting, it's almost would have been different if it were in the reverse, where you worked for a company or drove for a company or a driver, and now all of a sudden you're inspecting drivers.
Right.
I mean, is there a big difference for you?
Most definitely. I don't know how many times I've gone into Brian's office. I still do it to this day. And I says, man, I can't believe that let me backtrack. When we do an inspection and we do the inspection, we do what we got to do, put the paperwork, kick the driver, let him go. We forgot about it. We didn't really think much about it, whether it was a simple violation or whatever the violation was as an officer. Here we see the back end of it. I see the back end of it, and what it really does, there's a big, huge ripple effect. The safety scores now I have to look at, and how can we get those safety scores down? What can we do to do this? How can we get this information out to the driver? What do we need to do to bring our safety scores down and make sure the drivers are aware? And that was just a big thing. And I had no idea that what we did out there on the road made that big of a ripple effect in-house, inside the offices. And I look at things a lot different. And when I've been to a few lunch and learns where the State Patrol had some investigators there from the carrier side, I brought up some of the stuff that I've noticed. I said, hey, did you ever think about this when you do this? Or did you ever think about this when you do this? And it brought some light to their eyes too, to see what we see on this side of the house, as opposed to out just enforcing the motor carrier safety. But yeah, it's brought a lot of light to my eyes and what happens out there versus here.
If you had one piece of advice for a trucking company, not for the driver, but for the company itself, is it about who you put in the seat? Is it about the equipment? What is it that makes a company safe? Is it the whole package deal?
I'd say it's the whole package, the culture of it. Because you can have the greatest trucks out there, but if your culture is, we don't care. Eventually the because the newest technology eventually breaks down.
Yeah.
We did bus inspections. Was it last summer? Brand spanking new buses came up from right out of the factory, to Omaha. Yeah. We put 20 of them out of service, and they hadn't had a kid on them yet.
Yeah.
Quality control wasn't obviously what it should have been at the manufacturer. So it's the culture, it's everything. It's the mechanics that are doing the inspections, that are doing the repairs. It's the truck drivers that are doing their pre-trips. It's the truck drivers that have the safe driving mindset. It's the truck and defensive driving mindset. It's the people in the office of, hey, we need to keep track of these records, the annual inspections or whatever, what all you guys have. But yeah, it's the culture of it's everything.
Do you think speed is a leading indicator or a leading cause of motor vehicle crashes? Or you think it's distracted driving? If you had to put your finger on one thing.
Unofficially, I would say it's probably more, it's not just speed by itself. I mean, obviously speed affects things. Obviously, the faster you're going, you get there sooner. You get to the crash sooner. Higher the speeds are, increase the severity of the crash. But it's because you go down to Texas, or the speed limit down there is like 75 on a 2-lane highway, or 70 or whatever it is. Versus you go to some of these eastern states, truck speed limit's 55. And it just kind of depends. That truck driver can go 75 miles an hour in Texas legally and be just as safe as every other vehicle on the road. But the moment he starts playing with his phone or doing whatever, starts drifting off the road and crosses the center line, it wasn't the speed. Yeah, you were going fast, but it wasn't the speed that caused a crash. It was something else. Versus, you go to, like I said, some of these eastern states that have that 55 mile an hour speed limit. Again, it's the same thing. It's not necessarily because you were going slower. It's something else. Would be my suspicion with all that.
So a question for both of you, right, is and back to your original statement, the main reason why you do this is about road safety, right? Preventing accidents from happening and keeping the roads safe for our children, right? Really, our families and our children. So if you had one piece of advice to give to a commercial motor vehicle driver about roadside safety, what would it be?
Remember your purpose with that. As a professional truck driver, your role in highway safety is to get your truck, your trailer, your load from point A to point B as safely as possible so that you make it home. Your load makes it to where it's going. Other people around you make it. Commerce keeps going, and you're doing things as safely as possible with that. So again, you make it home to your family. Everybody else makes it home to their families. Just remember your purpose for that. And remember that when you're doing your pre-trip inspection. Don't just pencil whip it and run around the truck in 30 seconds and call it a good pre-trip inspection. Depending on your truck and trailer, depending on what you're hauling, it should take you 15, 20 minutes to go through the lights, the brakes, the load securement, that kind of stuff. So, and the tires, especially the inside tires. Make sure you're checking all the stuff. Remember that it's about highway safety, and do a good thorough pre-trip inspection as well, so that your truck is safe to be out on the road.
Todd?
Piggybacking off what Sergeant said, drivers, do the inspections, drive safely, but drivers have a harder role as well, is because now they have to worry about their vehicle and they have to worry about the motorist out there driving. They have to pay attention to what the motorist is doing, because I don't know the percentage of this, but a large percentage of the motorists will see the truck, but they don't pay attention to the truck. They'll merge into the lane. They have to hurry the passenger vehicles. They'll merge in front of a truck. They'll skid in front of a truck and think the truck can stop on a dime. So the truckers have to be more aware of that, which is hard for them. They have to worry about their safety, driving the truck, getting there. Then they also have to worry about the motorists, because looking at me now, I'm away from law enforcement, and now I'm a little bit more recognized of trucks. Like, I have kids that go to sporting events. We have to get there, so I'm in a hurry. I got to get there as fast as I can. I don't care how I get there. I got to get there. So truck drivers do a good job with the safety, like Sergeant was talking about, but also being aware of their surroundings when it comes to their stuff, their truck, and motorists.
All right. Matt and Todd, I want to thank you both for being here today. Appreciate the insight that you're giving to our drivers, and make sure you don't pick us the next time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
welcome. Thanks for hiring me.
Sure, absolutely. That wraps up this episode of Driver Stories. If you've enjoyed the episode and want to hear more, please follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To learn more about LGT, please visit our website at lgttransport.com or connect with us on social media. See you on the next episode of Driver Stories.